then they have to get a second from, again, a member of the Frederick County Republican Committee. And then we'll have the vote. It's pretty cut and dry. It's very simple. That's how it states in the statute. That's what we go by, and that's what's going to happen. Anything else there?
Just that it's not an ideal situation for anybody. So it's not how we'd like to handle it, but it is the only mechanism that state code gives us to handle it, to resolve it. So, yep. It will be a paper ballot. Yep. Yep. So
you don't have to be Stonewall. You have to be a member of FCRC.
It's all members of the FCRC or proxy. So, like Rodney said, 24.2-539 is the Virginia code that says we may replace a candidate following the rules of the party. The Republican Party plan, which is their bylaws, dictates that it must be a formal meeting called of the membership, and it is a majority vote. That is what they dictate. We're limited by a lot of things, so we could not take pre-filing in advance, because to do that, per the party bylaws, you need committee approval of the requirements. We could not get that before the meeting, so we have to take nominations from the floor. So we know Joe and Chad, they've said they're running. Somebody else could be nominated tomorrow from the floor. Unlikely at this point, but it could happen. So it's not an ideal situation, but it's the only mechanism we have to have somebody on ballot.
Can I ask a question? So so someone has to nominate each person from the floor, right? And then does that have to go to a procedural vote to advance the nomination in order to be on the ballot?
So what will happen is there will be a nomination from the floor to be considered in the vote on Tuesday. If more than 2 people are nominated, so I'm assuming somebody will nominate Joe in a second, somebody will nominate Chad in a second, then the committee will go to a vote to determine who then is the nominee for November.
Okay, so it won't be like, for instance, in the Board of Supervisors, somebody makes a motion to approve something or a motion to deny. It wouldn't be a vote on the initial motion, it would just be a vote to add them to the ballot.
Correct. Yep. And as part of this, we have to approve. So there was a draft set of rules in the call. There was also a follow-up amendment and a certification of eligibility of candidacy. Before we actually take on the vote, the committee will have to approve those measures. Because again, we were unable to get approval of those in advance because we couldn't hold a meeting before the meeting. So it's not straightforward. And I've been talking with the RPV's legal counsel for the last 3 weeks trying to figure out how we get out of this mess. So,
Any other questions on that? Oh, and let me make a comment on your vote for endorsement or not endorsement of John Reed. Sometimes things don't work as you planned. That's why we're here specifically for tonight. However, you take the lesser of 2 evils, or sometimes the lesser reprobate of 2 reprobates. But you have to take the lesser of 2 evils, because if we don't pick the ideal candidate, going to become our candidate, we have to vote for what we have. And we is not just us, it's everybody in Virginia. We have to encourage people to get out and say, look, we're supporting Sears. When they say, well, we may or may not like her. Well, your option is a baby-killing bitch from Northern Virginia who is a hateful person.
So 1 with the lieutenant governor's race and all 3 on the top of the ticket. None of us are perfect vessels. So the other part is on the lieutenant governor's race. There's been questions about Pat Harity dropping out, and so he dropped out after the deadline to file.
Right.
So the set of candidates was set, and he dropped out before the primary. So there's only 1 candidate left. So then John Reed was essentially unopposed in the primary. So that's one of the, I've got that question a lot of times also. So.
Excellent
So
clarification.
This happened after the primary.
Awesome. Guys, this is,
Good evening, everyone. I'm okay here.
you're just fine.
I'm not used to being videotaped. It's not one of my things. So, good evening, everyone. My name's Chad DeHaven. A lot of these faces I recognize. There's some new faces out there. As Dana indicated, I'm seeking the Republican nomination to fill the Stonewall Board of Supervisors seat that'll be on the ballot this November, take office in January. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit, tell you about me, probably hit some of the issues that I see as challenges for our community, and then I'll open up to questions. So I'm sure I'll forget some things along the way, but hopefully we've got time for questions and I can give you some feedback. So again, my name's Chad DeHaven, lifelong resident of Frederick County, product of the Frederick County public school system, business professional, and also a father and a husband. So I live in Stonewall with my wife Erin, daughter Alexandra. We've got a couple dogs, a couple cats, and we live in the house my grandparents built in the 1950s. So kind of neat. We renovated and moved in there about 5 years ago. Actually found the blueprints from Stolenbergers. They bought the house as a kit, which is awesome, really cool. And in my grandmother's own handwriting, the ledger of how much it cost to build the house. They budgeted $11,000. They built it for $9,000. Blows my mind when I think about where we are today. Anyway, so that's where we live. I grew up in the family business. So DeHaven's nursery was greenhouses, landscaping, nursery stock. That was my grandfather. He ran the greenhouses, grew the most beautiful poinsettias and mums you've ever seen. My grandmother ran the floral shop, and I grew up in that environment, cutting grass, moving plants, pinching mums, delivering poinsettias, and digging way more holes than I'd like to admit. That's where I grew up and where I live. So I've seen this community grow. 1980 is the year I was born, so I'm running up on 45 years this Friday. I will be 45 years here. 1980, about 35,000, 34,000 in Frederick County. We're bumping up against 100,000 now. That's an incredible amount of growth. And with that growth, I've seen the changes come. I've seen the orchards end up as developments. I've seen the cattle fields and fields end up as parking lots with big box stores on them. I've seen more traffic than I ever thought possible. I learned to drive. I live right on Route 11, so we exit right on the Route 11 north. I learned to drive there, never had an issue. Oh, as long as I don't see a car coming, I'm good to go. I was teaching our daughter to drive a couple years ago. That's not even an option anymore. It's a steady stream of traffic, right? These are the challenges we have. Growth is coming. It's here. We know that. The challenge is, how do we manage that growth? How do we plan for that growth? And how do we do it smart? And that's really why I'm running to fill that spot. I think I have a background and a perspective that brings some benefits to be able to do that. We've got challenges. We've got to face them. We've got to face them together. I want to see our community stay safe, stay prosperous, and be a place that my kids want to call home, and we can all continue to call home. That's important to me. I think that's probably important to all of you here as well. So that's a little bit of background on me. There's two things I wanted to talk about right off the bat. So when everything happened and we were put in this situation, I thought long and hard about it before I made the decision to get involved. But I did make the decision to get involved. In the last few days, I've been talking with people and getting feedback from others around the community. There's two things I've heard kind of about me or labels that have been put on me that I don't think are accurate. I want to address those kind of first thing right away. The first one, I've heard, oh, he's part of that old boys club, that old boy network, right? All those decisions are going to be made in smoky rooms, sipping on bourbon, if Rodney's provided, and smoking cigars, and dogs around the table playing cards. So, that's not me. That's just not a fair label. In fact, I have been involved in Republican politics in this community for a long time, so I've been back in the area. Gosh, I was telling somebody the other day, I was trying to do math, and I'm probably 20, 25 years since I'm out of college. I've stopped counting now and I'm doing the math in decades. But I've been back a long time, and since I got back, I've been involved in Republican politics. I've been in the FCRC since I got back. That's about 20 years. I've held a leadership position in the FCRC for 10 years. So I was treasurer and still am the treasurer of the FCRC. So I've been working to get Republicans elected, put forward Republican conservative policies, and keep it trying to improve the FCRC and grow it and create more resources. So I have been involved in politics, but I don't believe in backroom deals and secret handshakes and deals. In fact, the opposite. I believe in transparency, openness, and engagement. That's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. It's just the way I like to operate and the way I expect to do things. So I think engagement is key. And I was telling Dana, we were trading texts the other day, that's one of the things that excites me the most about this organization you guys have built out here, the engagement. It's like none other I've seen in a lot of other civic groups around the community. You guys are aware, you're educating yourself, and you're engaged, and that's critical because we can't face the problems we have without that level of engagement. It's not going to get done one person in a room with only their ideas. The only way this is going to get done is everybody coming to the table, being kind, nice, and willing to have those hard conversations. We're not always going to agree. And guess what? We're going to have to talk about really hard things that we're all equally passionate about. And we probably have different views at different times. We've got to work through those. We've got to come together. We've got to get everybody's thoughts involved and plot a path. If not, I'm worried this growth is just going to run through the infrastructure, our schools, our police, our fire and rescue, our transportation. We're going to collapse under the growth. I believe, though, if we come together, we put our minds and our hard work behind it, we can come up with workable solutions, and we can keep this a community we all want to live in and work in. Right? Another thing I want to say about transparency, I think government works best when it listens. Right? Lots of times you're going to be asked for, oh, well, fill out this survey or give us an opinion here. Right? And then you go months without ever hearing anything. You may never hear anything back. And we get discouraged. We're like, man, they're not listening to us. Well, let's keep making our voices known. And just so you know, that's not the way I operate. If you have an issue, you want to get in contact with me, don't hesitate. A lot of people in here probably already have email addresses and cell phone numbers. I'm happy to give them out. I might not have all the answers, but I'll certainly work through and get those answers, especially if elected to the Board of Supervisors. And I know a lot of you aren't from Stonewall, so you're going, what do I ever need to contact that guy for? You'd be surprised. I live in Stonewall. I often will contact other Board of Supervisors members from other districts. Lots of times because they're involved on different committees, so maybe they're the right person to talk to. But don't be afraid to engage elected officials or your planning commission reps or anything in other districts. It absolutely should do it that way. So that's the first one. I am transparent, I want to be engaged, and I want to make sure we're working together. The second one I've heard out there that I don't think is quite fair either is, oh my gosh, he's a data center lover. I'm not a data center lover. I'm going to be very clear. I want to see the rural areas that we have in this community and the rural character of this community maintained. Right? I did. We had some projects introduced kind of on the south end of town. The scope and location of those projects just did not make sense. And they're not going to happen. Right? Now that being said, I do think our community needs to be a business-friendly community. We need good business to help balance those tax rolls so that we're not overburdening the residents and the citizens with the real estate taxes. We've got to keep our tax rolls balanced. Are data centers the answer? I don't think so. Might some type of data center the answer? Possibly. Well, I think we've got to be business friendly. We've got to cut the red tape to business entry, and we've got to go out there and we've got to find clean industry, and we've got to locate the commercial in the right places. All right? I'm very sensitive to commercial where it gets located, data center type uses, generator noise. You guys might know it. So I told you I live in my grandparents' house. We're located off of exit 317 on Route 11 North. You guys know where the FEMA office building is? Giant office buildings, 4 or 5 stories tall. They've got a giant diesel generator. So that's built 100 feet off of my property line, about 150 feet from my bedroom window in the summer. I can tell you exactly when they cycle that generator on Sunday mornings at 0300. All right? So I understand that the impacts this can bring. And I want to work for that. But I do believe in business friendly, eliminating the red tape so that we can get the right businesses in the right spot. And that's where working together, planning with purpose comes into play here. We've got to think for the future, we've got to plan, and we've got to locate those in places that make sense. Often, if you look at good planning research, they say, hey, let's group these around certain areas that make sense. And then we can buffer them as we come out from heavy industrial to a business type use until you've then got a buffer to residential. So you're not buttoned up residential to high industrial use. Again, good planning, I think, makes room for business and lets us build that tax base so we're not overburdening the real estate tax rate. We don't have business, we don't have industry. The last lever that's left to pull on the board of supervisors in the budget is your real estate tax rate. That's it. Virginia is a Dillon rule state. What that means is the board of supervisors only can use the levers or the tax sources that the General Assembly in Richmond tells them they can use. They can't come up with their own and kind of pick and choose in these. They're limited to what they can choose. They've only got so many levers. If we're not careful, the only lever we've got is that residential tax rate. All right? So I think keeping it balanced is key. We know that growth's coming. The residential growth has been improved decades ago, even in areas you don't realize it. If you ever look at some of the planning maps, you see these beautiful orchards when you go across Glendom towards Payne Road. These orchards, they're actually all ready to subdivide it in 5-acre lots. It's done. They're there. They are going to go as the market takes them down. So we've got to think about that as we plan with purpose and we move forward. Another item I think is important to us are schools, right? We need to make sure our schools have strong teachers, safe classrooms, and high standards, right? I want to see us get back to basics in education, right? Math, science, they call it English or literature now. We've got to educate our children. It's important. It is a giant part of the county budget. We know that. It's where a huge part of the budget goes. So we've got to pay special attention to it. We've got to make sure we're getting value out of the money we put there. Okay? I've got educators in the family. So both of my in-laws, my wife's parents, are lifelong elementary educators. One of them was across the mountain in Loudon, her father. Her mother was right here in Frederick County for her entire elementary. She was at Red Bud Run and then actually at Stonewall. They love teaching. They love the students. They got frustrated. They're both retired now. As they got towards the end of their career, they were frustrated with different administrative requirements, testing requirements, curriculum requirements. They felt like they couldn't educate their kids enough, and that's what they love to do. I want to try to get rid of that red tape, work with the school board to make sure we're doing what we can, to make sure our teachers can teach, our kids can get educated in what we need them to do. You guys have probably heard it before, but we need education, not indoctrination. Right? Now, part of that, I did get an opportunity. So my daughter just graduated from James Wood this May or early June. Right? Her mother's very upset. We're losing her to Richmond. She's going to be a VCU Ram. So we're very happy with her, but her mother, she's an only child, so her mother's not doing well with that separation. Right? Sorry? Oh, okay. Anyway, so when she had gone into, I guess, high school, I got an opportunity to go through a program called the FCPS 101 Academy. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's a program the school system does that allows parents or other members of the community to learn more about the school system and how it operates. That's probably familiar with that program. It's a great program. I was even a product of Frederick County Public Schools, and I thought I understood it. One, it's definitely changed since I've been there. And two, there are aspects you don't even realize. So in this program, you get to go and you get to see different parts of the school system. So one meeting's a transportation, another one you might do food services, one might be curriculum, one might be budgeting. But you got an opportunity to see the entire school system and get to talk to a lot of the people involved in the school system. What I was so encouraged about is the people I got to interact with, whether they were schedulers at the bus trying to figure out each day, okay, we had a bus breakdown, how do I get those kids from Shawnee Land to where they need to go? Or whether they were in the cafeteria preparing the meals for our kids to keep them nourished, or our teachers in the classroom. They all were super excited about seeing our kids learn and become educated. But at the same time, they were frustrated. I want to do everything we can, working with the school board and the school administration, to streamline. Let's make it easy for them to go and teach and our kids to get educated again. So that's where I am on education. I'd be remiss not to talk about school construction, right? Schools are growing. We're having to build buildings, giant capital costs, right? That's part of it. We need school buildings, and they need to be proper facilities for our students to learn. They do. We need a good environment for them. What we need to make sure we're doing is we're looking at value. We're looking at what we're getting from these schools. So I work, I'm an accounting and finance guy, but I work with restoration companies, some construction companies, small electrical contractors, and I deal in the contracting world. In a project like the school, there are opportunities we need to make sure we're looking to value engineer these buildings, right? Maybe an architect spec this incredible light system like they did at Jordan Springs that they still don't able to get the lights turned on and off. Well, can we save 7 figures by putting switches on the wall? Maybe, probably. There's areas like that we need to be looking at and do. Can we do it smarter? Can we use planning to reduce the cost of these schools? The costs go up tremendously when you do what you did at James Wood. You renovated a school while it is occupied. That is incredibly complex. Leads to challenges for students learning, safety of students, and it slows a construction project down. And we all know time is money. You know, you got to put this up temporary and then take it down so that you can learn here, right? Planning, things like that. I think there's cost savings to be had. We need to look at the efficiency of that capital project. We also need to make sure that people that are in construction industry and do value engineering and can go out to the subcontractors and say, hey, suppliers for this, is there another option? Gives us the same quality, gives us what we need, but is a better cost. We need to make sure we're engaging those. Sometimes in the past, I don't think that schools did it. They're educators trying to build schools. Let's get construction people and business people that do that in there, figure out how best to get them for value. Safety, public safety, right? Our sheriff's deputies, our firefighters, our EMTs, they do heroic things every day. And I stand with those guys. Guys and girls. Sorry, I'm getting old. Say guys instead of guys and girls. Guys, girls, ladies, men, women. We have a tremendous resource there. We've got to make sure we're giving them the resources, the equipment they need, the training they need to go out, do what they need to do to keep us safe. Right? I also want to recognize the volunteers we have. Are there any volunteer firefighters, EMTs in the room? Okay. We at Frederick County still have a split volunteer and paid fire system. What that means is Frederick County does have full-time employees that do fire and EMT. We also have volunteer stations. The stations are owned by the volunteers, the apparatus is owned by the volunteers, and there's a whole set of volunteers that spend their days and nights and time committed to supporting that community in which they serve, right? Volunteers, we gotta make sure we eliminate the red tape for those guys. Let those guys and girls be able to continue to volunteer. I know there's movement towards a paid system, but we've got to acknowledge the contribution, because I can tell you, the change to your taxes, if the county has to go out and take that entire budget right now, it's big. It's big. Last thing I want to hit on real quick, I think transportation, right? Traffic is crazy. We got a couple big issues in my mind. The first one being 81. 81 is that main artery through our county from the north all the way to the south, and it is dangerous, and it is unpredictable, and it's not getting any better. We've got some help coming. I don't know if anybody's been engaged in the I-81 corridor enhancement studies or any of those meetings. So there was a meeting last week at Shenandoah University. The Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Miller, came all the way up from Richmond to talk about the I-81 plan and the funding. So there was a first round of funding that happened a few years ago. We have 2 lanes, an additional lane on the 81 now, from down 550 all the way up past exit 319. The project's funded, and it's going into the design phase. So we've got some help coming. Now, keep in mind, VDOT does not operate on a short time frame. So even though we're now to the design phase, it's probably still 4 to 5 years before we see dirt moving. As that's happening, there's a second round of I-81 corridor enhancement happening now. They're in the phase asking for public opinion. And I say this because I've got a room full of very engaged people, because if you're not paying attention to this is something you need to get engaged on. Right now, they're looking for recommendations of what we need to do or other enhancements to our area in the Stanton District. We need to be involved. There's, maybe I get it to you, Dana, there's a website out there. There's a survey that's open till July 31st and it closes. Looking for input on what we need. Me personally, I'm pushing to get them to take those extra lanes, not in them in 319 where it's going to bottleneck back down. Get them all the way to West Virginia where they can meet us with their extra lane. Things like that are what we need to communicate to them. Again, VDOT funding and transportation, most of that, state dollars, federal dollars flowing through the state. It's not local dollars. So we've got to continue to work with our state representatives, Wiley, big part of the community, Dolores Oates on the other area, and our CTB members, right? Ty Lawson and John Good are our representatives on the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Those are the way money gets transferred here in Frederick County, right? We need to stay engaged with them. I've built relationships with these people based on my past. I think that gives me an advantage to have that relationship, continue to work with them, visit them in Richmond, talk to the right people, keep funding coming this way. 37 is another piece. For about 30 years now, all I've heard is the answer to all the transportation woes in Frederick County is building the eastern bypass at 37. I'm here to tell you, it can't and won't be built. Can't and won't be built isn't strong. Talk to the planning directors, they're going to tell you, it's $1 billion project. This second phase of 81 for the entire corridor has $2.25 billion allocated to it. Frederick County's never going to get $1 billion to build that bypass. We need to get our heads out of the sand, and we need to figure out how to put workable solutions in. Let's get that off the drawings and off the plans, because until it comes off, we're going to keep talking about it. There are good solutions now for being able to put connectors between 11 to 7, 7 to Cincinnati to 50. But the single monolithic project that's going to cost $1 billion is not going to happen. Let's talk about realistic solutions and how we do it. One of the things I want to throw in there is a lot of this road improvement projects, they're done and funded through VDOT with a smart scale process. What that means is there's this giant algorithm that determines who gets money. We're competing against Northern Virginia. We're competing against that sexy new tunnel in Hampton Roads, you know. And this algorithm determines that. One of the things that can help us locally is if we budget properly and include transportation dollars for matching funds. Well, what's that mean? Well, in a smart scale project, if I can show up to the state and say, hey, I've got $1 million if you'll times 10 it, that makes that project more attractive to them. It's a way to leverage local dollars into bigger dollars. I'll close real quick. Again, I think we've got a lot of challenges. I'm encouraged because I think with engaged people and hard work, we can make a big difference in our community. All right? I thank you guys. We're going to do questions now, questions later.
That's 25.
I'm sorry, Dana. I got
okay.
long-winded.
You know what? Why don't we go 5 minutes and do questions because we're on schedule here. Anybody got a quick question?
So I'm kind of dodging the pole here. Holly? Yep.
You said you're against data centers, but you voted for both of them.
I haven't voted for a data center. The Planning Commission hasn't made any votes on data centers.
We put our hands up at the work session. Do you want them to go forward?
I don't agree with that analysis. So the board at that meeting, at the joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, Board of Supervisors was working to get a consensus on the change and the edit to a comprehensive plan. It was the only question asked was, do we want to move a comprehensive plan amendment into the comprehensive amendment process
For data centers.
for those two specific projects? There were no votes. So no, I do not believe that. I think that's you're completely misconstruing wanting to have more information from a vote for data centers. I think that's incorrect. I think it's improper. I think it's a misrepresentation.
No.
We can disagree, but there was no vote. And I'm not
The
for
first
data
one,
centers.
you did hands, was 4-4. The second one passed through that yes, we want more information. But before we bring data centers in this county, we need to talk about sustainability. And I did hear you mention that.
So I'll answer your question on the sustainability. We're going to have to agree to disagree on a vote on data centers. I do not believe I voted that I'm pro data center. And I'll stand behind that 100%. You're absolutely right on the sustainability and the individual projects. I think it goes to the individual projects. The scale we saw down there was huge. It was going to be the biggest data center in Virginia on the East Coast. That scale doesn't make sense.
That's why they won it, because it was scale.
But
It was. It was. And you've been to the same planning conferences I've been to, and you know, there's lots of different types of data centers at different scales serving different clients. And I'm not willing to say absolutely not because it starts with a D and has a second word that has a C on it. I think we've got to look and see what the projects are because you're absolutely right. The resources they take up are a key consideration. The location they're going to go is a key consideration. And part of planning with purpose means we get the opportunity to evaluate those individual projects. I will say this, the Board of Supervisors in the county did some great things. To the east of us, they opened up their county and said, we want all the data centers, we bring them all, we'll put them anywhere, let's go. Frederick County has already said, no, we're not going to do that. Things will require a process, things will require CUP, and we have a base set of requirements, a base set. So we haven't opened up the county, which I think is a great thing, which lets us have exactly the conversations you're talking about.
no, because
We got about 30 seconds.
when we work in that work session, we're talking only to the data
I
center
got it.
people. We got to talk to the people that
That's
don't
the-
want it. That's the point.
I agree with you. We need to engage all stakeholders. The people in the community, the people that do this work, the people that know how technology is changing, right? How many of you, everyone uses technology, right? There's Moore's Law. Technology doubles in speed and capacity every 5 years, something like that. Don't quote me, I got that probably wrong. But it changes very quickly. Not only does computing change, but the technology that creates the environment for that technology changes too. In 5 years, maybe they don't use water anymore. Maybe the electrical needs are much smaller. Maybe there's another type of electrical that can serve those facilities without the current grid. There's a group down south in Virginia now working on micronuclear reactors to power these types of facilities. So what I'm saying is, I want to learn and know more. I want to see if there's an advantageous option for a county.
All right, we gotta stop it here. We can finish this at the end because I did need time to answer questions and so forth. I want you guys to thank Chad for coming out here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
All right, folks, I want to introduce our second candidate for Stonewall Board of Supervisors, Mr. Joe Brand, who joined us tonight. Guys, give him a hand for being here.
All right, well, thank you. This poll is awkward. I will admit to that. I don't know if I can come over this way and be a little better.
You sure can.
So this has been an interesting race. We'll just have to start with that. And you have seen me here before when I was running the primary. When the primary was over, I said, okay, the citizens voted. That's what it is. And I was going to let it go. The next night was a joint work session for the data centers. I still care about being a voice for the community. And so I was there, even after attending a memorial service for a friend of mine's wife that passed away. So I made sure to be there and to represent. Wasn't any speaking involved because it was just for the work session. But I wanted to be there and represent and be a part of the community, speaking their voice and their mind on being heard about the data center and that important issue. I'll table that till later. We can get into Q&A on that. For me, I've been living here in Stonewall for 10 years. My wife and I have 3 wonderful kids, 14, 12, and 10. They enjoy being homeschooled because that is the type of learning environment that they really excel at. We have been working through an education journey, trying lots of different things to find the right fit for what they want, to help them find their God-gifted abilities and talents, to focus on what they are good at and help them excel in that, and then teach them the basics that they need for everything else. And that's just been a thing we have done actually since the beginning. My son wanted to try public school, and he did go to 6th grade at James Wood, and he went through the whole year and made it, and said, never again, I don't like it, don't want it, it's not for me. So, you know, we're about choice, we're about enabling what is right for the person, and being supportive of that and what they want. My wife is a wonderful stay-at-home mom, and so she is able to take care of the kids and help them with all of their learning and do all that stuff. I'm a work-at-home dad. I've got a nice remote job thanks to COVID. And I do work in the cybersecurity industry, so I know a little bit about tech and hackers and keeping yourself safe from scams and all those fun things. I currently work for a Gap, the clothing company, which is in San Francisco. Don't blame me, that's just where they work. I don't want to ever go there. I've already been once, and it's disgusting. So we'll just leave it at that. And you can see what liberal politics do to a neighborhood. It was an abysmal walk to work from the hotel to the office to just see all this stuff on the streets. And we don't need to mention it because you probably heard the stories. But for our community, I really care about our citizens, the voice that they have, the voice that they want the elected officials to hear. I have been participating as a citizen advocate for many years, going to board supervisors, school board meetings, speaking my mind, and speaking up for the things that I felt were important, and connecting with people who were in the community and wanted to get connected to figure out how can they do more. We have also seen a lot of times the citizens show up and the board still vote the other direction. And so that's just the way things are, and I have not agreed with that, and so I just keep getting engaged, keep getting more involved. I call them up and talk to them politely and respectfully, because that's the right way to be heard, is to speak to them with respect, let them say their viewpoint, counter with your arguments politely and respectfully, and then you see what happens when they go to vote. For that reason, I wanted to get involved more in politics. So I started looking at how can I get more involved, and the next thing was to just sign up and say, fine, I'm going to run for the board of supervisors. So we've done that. That's all been history, and we've seen that. Unfortunately, things worked out the way they did, and everyone called me up and said, are you going to get back in? And I said, do you want me to? Yes, you're the right guy for the community. You're the one that really connected with people, that really is listening to the community, and we want you to be the one that goes in. Okay, then I'm going to sign up and I'll put my hat in the ring. I understand the process Derek has established. I have no complaints with the process. That's what the rules are. We're going to play by the rules. So I will be there tomorrow night seeking a nomination and a second, and we'll have that, and then we'll see how the vote goes tomorrow. For community issues, again, the data centers are a hot topic because we need to plan appropriately, and I don't agree with rushing forward with comprehensive plan amendments before you even start your comprehensive plan process. And I want to see the community get engaged and bring their voices to that so they can say if they want data centers, where do they want the data centers. And I agree with the principle of that zoning ordinance that created a special class for data centers. I don't agree that they kind of copied from Loudoun County and just took their rules for the most part, and I'm sure there were a few changes here and there, and didn't really study it into what are the right sustainability things that we need for our community. They didn't really put in water usage kind of requirements and criteria. They just said if they can get a contract to serve water, they're good. So there's lots of things I think the community can speak up to and look to bring into sustainable kind of process for what we want. We also understand that the electricity is a big issue on the data centers. They all want to discredit the fact that when they put in a data center that the general usage goes up and then rates go up. That's just the fact that they are consuming extra power. It costs more for the power company to bring all that power up, and then they just level set it to all of the ratepayers, business and consumers included. And there's plenty of news articles that you can go and find and study and see that that has been the trend over time, and it's just the way it is. So I think if we can find smart ways to look at the size of what we're bringing in, we can better control what we bring in here. But we can't control what our neighbors next door do in the next county over. So if they're bringing in data centers, that will affect our rates too. So this is not just a local issue. If we say yes to data centers and we bring them all in here, let it do, then that electric rate will go up, and so will Clark and Shenandoah County and the neighbors around us that get from Shenandoah Valley and Rappahannock. So I think we want to have an informed community. So let's get the facts and all these questions out there. Let's get the studies from both sides, get the arguments out, and have the community and the business weigh in and work out what is the right thing for this community and how do we do that. And I agree, I don't want to see our farms being turned into data centers. Yes, we can completely stop progress. We can't stop, but these people need to find a way to make a living. And they've got to find something to do. If they're retired and nobody wants their farm, it's just empty land, and it's got to have a productive use. So how do we encourage our farming community to be more robust so that we have something that's sustainable and survivable? And so I really want to help encourage the farming community to be able to continue to exist in this community. And I think there's a lot of things to be said for the homesteader movement and what they are doing to bring in small micro farms into the community and provide CSAs where you can go get fresh veggies, get your nice farm-raised eggs, versus what those store-bought things are. And as I said it the last time, there's a big difference in the color of pancakes that you make from scratch from the store-bought egg and a farm-fresh egg. Much more yellow farm-fresh, much more nutrient-dense, and a lot better for you. But also, how can we change rules for our school system? Because they are a big consumer of food in this community. Can't we change things so that our local farms can grow veggies that are then sold to the schools and then provide fresh, locally grown produce to our schools? The wonderful Department of Education and FDA couldn't say the only thing that they can buy is USDA graded meat, which is very expensive for a farmer to take their cow, take it to someplace and get butcher certified. Whereas, when I go to a farmer and I buy a cow share, it's not graded and certified, it's butchered, the way it's meant to be. But the schools have rules that they have to follow, so that's what it is, but is there a way that we can change that to where they can get some percentage of their meat from safe local farms? And then now you're creating more market for the sustainable community and agriculture that we want in this community. One of the big things that I see in our board of supervisors is the transparency around spending. And a couple key recent votes that kind of explain that for me is the Fourth High School, like it or love it, they just said yes to spending money. We will pay for it next year. And they didn't say what the bond would be, how much that would increase the expenses for the community, and therefore what the next year's taxes would be. We have seen that now with our recent tax raises, the property value raises, and all the assessment. And I think the number's right around 18 million a year that they need for debt service to serve on those bonds as they fully mature and issue. I mean, they've only done right now the planning part, so they haven't spent all of the money. It's not all bonded out. But when they get to fully bonding it out, that's $18 million more a year and stuff. I'm not saying it was the right or wrong choice to spend that money, but what I'm saying is it wasn't clear how you would pay for it when you're voting to spend it. And so I want to be able to see, as they are voting to amend the budget and approve something, that they also figure out what is that downstream impact. What is either in this budget, how are we reappropriating money to pay for it, or next year we project that it will do this. When you see the Congress do their big budget bills and all that, they get OPM to come in and score it and say, oh, it's going to look like this, and it's going to have this deficit impact and this spending impact, and you have all that analysis on the congressional bills. But when our county is voting on a school thing or a sheriff's thing or some other thing, it's just straight up, are we paying this bill or we're not paying this bill? I don't know how we're going to pay for it, but are we going to say, yes, we'll write that check? So I would like to see the process get adjusted so that we can see not just how are we spending it, but then where is that money coming from out of the budget, or what's the future budget impact, because it's going to have an impact in the future. The key thing that I really see for not just our county but our state is what's happening in November, and that's why I'm really focused on how do we have the right voter engagement for this election. And like it or not, the FCRC is small. There's a small group of people who are dedicated in doing the work for this county. Trump, in the last election, has 60% of the vote. We have a lot of people moving in here, coming over, and moving in who are not nice, good red Republicans, however you want to say it. But they like to come here because we have lower taxes, lower cost of living, and they like the lifestyle that we have in this community. We've got to get out and engage those people and tell them why they love it here so much and how can we keep it that way. And so with November's election, it's a big choice between the state going blue, no longer being purple, or can we help keep this red contingent going in Richmond? And we've got to get the voter engagement out there, and the voters need to see that the local party will run a clean, fair election, and I'm confident we will, and that the choices that they make will be representative for the people of the Stonewall district. And then we need to look at how do we engage all of those voters to show up and not just vote the local stuff, but the statewide issues. And so getting out there, knocking the doors, doing the outreach for all the races above is what's really important. And I will commit to doing that and getting that done because it's important. Because if Abigail wins and we get a blue House and Senate, where's those gun rights? She's already promised she's going to go and sign every gun control bill that comes across, and that's just what she said. And as much as we like the fact that Trump is in office, we can't be content that Trump is in office. Things are changing for the better, but that's going to take a long time, and we still have to worry about the local politics and our state politics, and we've got to do our work here to be supportive of the conservative politicians and get all of the things done and make sure that Virginia stays red. Right now we have the mix and the balance, and it's purple, and it's ugly, as we have seen in the past few legislative sessions. And we have seen the attacks that they have done on our gun rights. We have seen the attacks they have done in homeschooling, and we have seen what they want to do to state control of most everything that can be done. So I'm more about the local control and not worrying about the federal government telling us what we should do here in Frederick County. And yes, we're a Dillon Rule state, so we can have a nice dialogue with our state reps and figure out how we better do the things that we want to do. And so I want to help be that voice for our community to our delegates in Richmond to figure out how do we change things for the better for the community. What are the things in the state that are not working, from everything from schools to social workers to the firefighters, EMS, So all the things that impact us locally, especially the state construction of our roads and how that whole system goes, how expensive VDOT is compared to other states to do a mile of road. We have got to find ways to be better and smarter with our tax dollars. And the biggest reason we can't get our roads fixed is because it's so expensive. If we can lower the cost and the budget's still where they are, cost savings means more roads. And so figuring out how to get those issues advocated out and focus on, VDOT and their contracting with everybody to do everything versus doing stuff in-house and other things that contribute to that really just make a big difference in how much everything costs and how long it takes to get it done. So I don't know how we're doing on time, but I've been talking for a bit, and I think a lot of you have heard me before, so I'll leave more time for questions. Yes, Mike.
Well, first, I'd like to thank both you and Chad for coming out here and speaking.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And thank you to the Patriots for creating a forum for everybody, because it's important we get the chance to hear everybody. So what's particularly important to me is a question for you both. One of you is going to win, and I'm going to work with one of you.
Yep.
And I'll be happy to work with either of you. The important thing for me is, will both of you commit today to work with me to bring back civility and proper decorum up on the County Board of Supervisor meetings, so we're not attacking each other in public. We are unified. We are working for the citizens and not against each other up on the dais. I want to have a Board of Supervisors that I can work with that are committed to getting things done and not worrying about attacking each other and having our spouses and family members attacking each other. It's unproductive, and that's not working for the citizens. It's self-serving. I want to work with one of you guys to create a better board. And so I'm asking you to publicly state you're willing to work for a better Board of Supervisors.
I'll commit to that, absolutely. I think that civil dialogue and discourse is paramount to getting it done. It's going to take all of us working together, and if we're fighting, we're not able to do the work and move ahead. And I thank Joe for all the conversations he and I have had and a civil dialogue. And I think it's great. This is how it's supposed to work.
Awesome.
Yeah, I go with that. I've always, all of this time, anytime I've gone to the school board of supervisors, it's about the issue, not the person or the personality. And so I will commit to, we'll have a discussion on issues, and we may have differences of opinion, but it will be respectfully about the issue and not about you as a person or your family and any of the other drama. And I've been that way all this time. Everything I have done and everything I have said has been about the issues and how can we push forward on what's right for the county.
Okay?
Awesome.
So, question, I would have asked Chad the same thing, but whether it's data centers, we're dealing with the growth that's coming in this county, what's your criteria for evaluating how do
Thanks for waiting.
What's your criteria for evaluating development projects coming down the pike and how we want to kind of shape the future of the county as far as future development, future growth, while possibly, hopefully, protecting the rural aspect of the county? And then what would be your criteria as far as evaluating data centers? I think you went in a little more depth on it, but I think those are kind of, that's what the board of supervisors are going to be dealing with, right? Land use and data centers is a new flashpoint on it. So kind of what's your criteria there?
For me, I really focus on the basic principles of government and least government. Property rights are a big issue for me. And that's a whole big, broad topic when it gets into property rights. It's your property and you should be able to do what you want with it. But we have zoning, we have all these rules, and we have these things to help make it more balanced and fair for people to not have a nuclear waste dump in their backyard. You do want some organization, and that is good for the community. And that's where the comprehensive plan part is important, because that's where the community and the county get to say, this is what we see as the future direction of the county. And what we often see with all of the stuff going through the planning commission is rezoning from something else and into. And one of the first questions is it in accordance with the comprehensive plan? Yes, no. And so that's why we see a lot of the fight over what's in the comprehensive plan, because if it's in the comprehensive plan, or it's in one of the land use plans that's part of the comprehensive use plan, and I was part of that whole Northeast land use plan fun conversation that we had a couple years back, and we've just had, I think the Eastern land use is going through, or done now. So those are the chance for people to get engaged, and unfortunately we don't see enough engagement and people getting out there, or we do see lots of engagement, but then you don't get any actual change out of that engagement. And I will say a lot of times with these surveys, I'm a tech guy and I see how these things are, and I do marketing and all of that, working with those folks. The way with words is so special and nuanced that they almost tell you have option A or B, but A and B are the same. So I want to see more fair and balanced surveys that really allow for the breadth of options and diversity of, do you hate this or do you love it? Not, is this palatable or are you okay with it? You know, so that's my thing on the planning and that process. For me, I want to really help focus on what are the right things for getting this county to grow. We do need to support businesses. We need to cut red tape. I hear a lot of complaints from businesses of how long it takes to get a permit, to get inspection, to get this, to get that, and they come out and find one fault, they go home and come back and do another visit. That's another payment for them to come out. So, like, just come out and tell me everything wrong. Let me get a checklist from my developer and my construction crew. We'll fix it all and come back. You know, just one stop, get it done. Tell me everything wrong instead of just nitpicking back and forth. So there's a lot of things that I want to validate. You know, those are people telling me that run businesses and work in things. I also hear that there's a lot of farms who are exempt from a lot of that zoning and inspection type of stuff, but yet they get inspected because it's, well, it's the right thing to do. And that holds them up from doing their job and getting their farm and their business to grow. So there's a lot of things that I hear from the community that I would like to then validate and work through the process and vet to see where are we going wrong on things and how do we make this much better for our business community to be able to grow their business and start their business. And really, I think it's better to plan ahead for what you want and then make sure that things that are coming in go along with that plan. So we can say if we want data centers, it goes here, but not out here in the rural areas. If we want businesses, we want entertainment centers, we want casinos coming, and it's not in Frederick County, but it's in Winchester, so pay attention. They want to take part of the apple blossom and turn into a casino, event center, I should say. But that's in the works if you aren't paying attention. And state law allows it. So, but yeah, that's, hopefully I've answered the question. I'm rambling on a bit back and forth on things.
I'm not a native of this part of Virginia, although I lived a number of years in other parts of Virginia. We all have our reasons for moving here. I'd be interested to know where you're originally from and why you came here.
Yep. So I grew up just over the state line in West Virginia, Jefferson County. I had a home there after getting out of college and getting my own job, and got a townhome, and then I got married and started a family there. Got the 3 kids. Well, the third one on the way. I'll be correct here. And 6 months into it, the wife is like, yes, I finally think this house is too small. We need a bigger home. So 3 months to baby popping out, we had to find a home. We had a checklist of things that we wanted, and it was acreage, no HOA, well, septic, and minimal utilities so that we can have our own place and have our own control. And I could only really find that here in Virginia. West Virginia has grid rules on HOAs, and unless you're right on the state road, you're having an HOA. So, and it's roughly the same here because we are on a state road and state plows the roads, and that's great.
So I was excited to hear you talk about the possibility of local farms providing food to the schools. That's something that I've looked into, and they spend, Dr. Erskine and Mr. Sertivan just left, but I think they spend around $7 million a year just on the food. So that's $7 million of farm business that could be happening right here in Frederick County that is instead going to multinational, companies like Cisco and whatever, these huge companies. So, do you think that that's something that could actually be worked on so that we could start generating extra money for our local farms and get those products into the schools?
I think it is, because I think some of those procurement requirements are done at the school board level, and so they have to look at it. Some of it's going to be state regulated, and obviously there's federal regulations, but we got to go in and look at the problem, go find out where is the issue, what do we have to change, or where do we have the freedom already and we're just not exercising it. They have freedom of contract to do certain things. There probably is no requirement on buying farm fresh veggies. It's probably the pricing of the farm fresh veggies versus what they're getting out of Cisco or whoever else. But those farm fresh veggies will provide much more nutrition than what you're getting out of a mass farm.
To me, someone who hates taxes and generally has a disdain for government, I, like, of all things that my tax money could be spent on, if it's like, well, we're already spending this much, but if we spend a little bit more, then we're going to get real nutrition to our kids. For me, it's like, okay, I can handle that.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
I tend to agree with that because it keeps people out of the hospital if you don't have the same kind of garbage going in, garbage out.
Will we have less sick days for kids if they eat healthier food? at
Absolutely.
school? Especially for a
Lower
lot of
medical
kids whose
bills.
only nutrition is from the school.
That is one of the biggest factors to anything for us right now is the air, the food, and the water. Yep. Any other questions real quick, guys?
All right, Scott?
Oh, yes.
Several months ago when you spoke at the FCRC meeting before the primary, the first thing you said was the Frederick County School Board is violating the First Amendment with their public speaking policy, and I want to know how that's possible since our public speaking policy has been looked at by numerous attorneys. There's case studies saying that we can do what we do, and it is a limited forum meeting. We're not violating anybody's rights, and I want to know how you get to that point.
So I believe freedom of speech is freedom of speech. And yes, we want decorum, and we would like to be appropriate in what is said in there. But sometimes you just can't help people's feelings. And sometimes people are hurt, and people have been gavelled down for different reasons for things they have said. And even worse is they are being gavelled down for things that they are reading from school books, or books that are available in the school system.
That's not true. She was not reading from a book.
She was reading from a book.
No, she was not.
And we've seen that.
But regardless, it's not a violation of First Amendment rights, and you can't tell me how that's justified. And if you want people to come in and curse like a field hand, and people that drop their pants and wave their butts at school boards and things, I don't see how that's productive. But regardless, it's been looked at by attorneys, there's case studies, so it doesn't violate anybody's First Amendment rights.
And there's attorneys that have said that the NFA is a valid constitutional act. And I think a lot of us in here would disagree with you. Which is now going through because they reduced the tax to zero. And the only reason it was ever supported was because it was a tax and not a registration.
I think it's about time to go back to Constitution.
Amen.
Guys, I got to say thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is everybody satisfied? Everybody pretty happy with what's going on tonight? Yes.